Howdy, I'm your host, Captain Rob Modies. Welcome to Catch You Outdoors, presented by the Waypoint Podcast Network at waypointtv.com. Besides doing podcasts, I'm also a published author. Bridge to Paradise, a book of short stories about travel, fishing, and life in the slow lane, is available on Amazon Kindle, and so is What I Know About Fishing Southwest Florida, an in-depth book about fishing the waters of Pine Island Sound, south to the 10,000 Islands. Book 3 is on the way. Take a kid fishing adult's guide for introducing youngsters to the world of angling. The initial edits are complete. The rewrites are underway. Yeah, photos and cover are even in process. All right. Episode 52. You know what that means? 52 weeks, because I didn't miss any, so wow, I can't believe it. It's called Thoughts and Observations because I couldn't think of anything else to call it. I wasn't going to do a random, wasn't going to do a total fishing thing. So I thought, just do some thoughts and observations at the end of my 1 year. It's not really the anniversary yet. That'll come next week, and I'm still working on, I got all kinds of ideas for that. So, why not? Being as this is number 52, though, it's obvious to me that I've been doing this podcast for a year now. So on that note, I thought perhaps I'd just reminisce and throw out there, throw some thoughts out there and observations. It's what I used to call hodgepodge. For those of you who've been around long enough, listening long enough, you've heard a couple hodgepodge episodes. Anyhow, I'm going to start with fishing. Why not? I spent a very unusual, I spent a very unusual year in Fort Lauderdale, years in Fort Lauderdale. After moving there almost, 3 years ago? After living 20 years in Fort Myers, for me, fishing was a bit difficult along the ocean. But I didn't give up, but I did lose some interest, and that's it. I'm admitting it. And that's bad. I found that I actually missed the backcountry style of saltwater fishing. However, I did enjoy going to the beach, and that's something I hadn't done on a regular basis in years. So that was kind of a really interesting twist. Sitting in a beach chair, reading a book, watching the tourists, watching the birds, snorkeling off the beach, which was beautiful. Crystal clear water off Fort Lauderdale's beaches. So, I can't complain about it. But the fishing definitely took a back seat, which was a bit disappointing to me. And the bit of the lack of the fishing really bugged me. I mean, really bugged me. Oh, I did some. I was going back across the alley every now and then fishing with my brother and friends. But even then, that was tough. Freaking COVID. You know what I'm talking about, right? It was like, we moved over in 2020, early 2020. We got over there in the very, very, very first few months, Christmas time, going in January, February, and all of a sudden March, all hell broke loose. So what little fishing I thought I was going to do, of course, that really took a back seat. But now that seems to be in the past. At least I hope so. So now I come down to a place that I love more than anywhere else in Florida, and that is the truth, because it's been a long, long time. Even before I met my lovely wife, Janelle, I came to the Keys for a break. What's the word? Respite? Maybe. I don't know if that's the right word or not. A little seclusion and quiet from the big city. Back then, before I met Janelle, I was working in Miami, and it was a crazy place. And I don't mean in a bad way. It's just crazy. It's a big, big city. I used to call it New York with a beach. A real beach. Sorry, New Yorkers. I know. I'll probably catch something for that. That's all right. So I come down to this place that I love more than anything else, finally, the Florida Keys, and I finally go fishing with my kayak in a backwater area near our house on Largo Sound. And on my first cast, I get a hard hit. My very first cast, I get a hard hit. And then over the next few hours, I hook up with dozens of fish. And for the first time in a long, long time, I feel really good about wetting a line. I can't tell you how magical that was. Sunday, Jonelle and I put the kayaks in the water, and I took her to the same area I fished earlier in the week, and bang, it happened again. More fish, more bites. By the way, we did it all on artificials, which was really fun. Little gulp curly tails stuck on a jig. It was wonderful. We had perfect weather. We had very light east wind. No wind at all when we started, and then a very light east wind, maybe 5 miles an hour. A little bit of cloud cover to keep the sun locked out for a bit, but not so much that it killed the visibility in the water. I even managed to land a 16-inch mangrove snapper inshore in the mangroves. I have never seen one that large when I fish Fort Myers, ever. Seen some 13s, maybe we could lie and say a 14, without actually measuring it. But I had never seen one that I thought was a redfish when it got to the side of the kayak. I looked down and went, oh my gosh, it's dinner, which it was. We enjoyed it. Cooked it up on the grill last night. So I'm pretty happy. No, we're happy. The Florida Keys have long been in both of our blood, DNA, if you will. It's a place we used to go and not worry about the world years ago. When we first met, we met in Key West, and that was 27 years ago. We're coming up on our 25th wedding anniversary this October. And we spent a great deal of time down here, both in Key West and up in Islamorada. And hand in hand, we learned to fish Florida Bay here I'll date myself, without a GPS. We worked our way back across the flats, and what looked all the same to us when we first started, as you mosey about it over a year or so, you start to really realize the differences in the places and the where the fish are going to be and where they move to and that kind of stuff. Not only that, you manage to navigate across 20-something miles of water until you get to almost 30 miles of water with the zigzags, before you get up to Flamingo, to the tip of Florida. So it's quite remarkable. But yes, we're happy. I just wondered if every day stuff would get mixed up with euphoria over the past month and a half of, we started coming down here, I guess July, started moving things. August was official. Now September is very official. But I thought that, after that euphoria wears off and you're like looking around going, okay, I'm here. I made it. This is good. Would it go away? And no, it hasn't. That hasn't been the case at all. We're both still grinning about this. And that's a good thing. I just had a funny thought. I could pay the bills now with a smile on my face instead of a grimace. Same bills. It's just I live in paradise. It's a whole different thing in my head. I'm working on birthday number 69. And that kind of freaks me out just a tad at times. But then again, it totally grounds me. I realize that time is growing short. So we, Jonelle and I, must do the things that we've long talked about, and that included moving to the Keys. I bet a lot of you listeners have talked in the same way about travels and goals. My advice is just do it. No, Nike's not a sponsor. Not yet. I can dream. I really think that you need to just get out there and do those things. I've been very lucky in my travels. I've seen some amazing sights. I traveled to Europe, into the Caribbean, the Bahamas, down south. I've been to a lot of Mexico, a lot of really, really interesting places. And here in the States, it's like seeing the Grand Canyon for the first time, the Painted Forest, the Petrified Forest, Painted Desert, the Giant Crater, going out west and seeing the Sequoia National Forest and things like that. I have really been to some very cool things, but there's so much to do. And as I grow older, I just want to get it done. And the Keys were really important in that. I have to tell you right now, they really were. I'm very, very excited about the fact that I can go out in my backyard and catch fish again. That's really cool. My fishing adventures will continue. Probably much more than before over the last 3 years. Again, COVID broke into it. I did do some freshwater fishing. I went after peacock bass and did stuff like that. So I'm not going to say I didn't fish. I did. It just wasn't the end all be all like it was with me just a few years before that. And so it was really interesting to wind up going back after him. When I went fishing last week, early in the week, it's actually this week technically, it was last week, early in the week. I came home thinking how to get back out. I came home and arranged tackle. I came home and did things that I haven't done in ages. Getting ready for a trip, psyching for Sunday, with my wife. That's a good thing. But anyway, these adventures of mine in fishing will continue probably much more than before, and I plan on launching in other places to explore the nearshore waters all around me. The Florida Keys, and we're talking 100 miles long. We live at mile marker like 103 or something, 102. I don't know, somewhere in that. We're just above 99. So that means there's 100 miles between us and Key West. A huge string of islands with a huge string of bridges and a huge string of places to put a kayak in the water. So I'm excited about it. I'm very excited. You can probably hear it in my voice. I am pumped. I am really ready for this, and I needed it. And the places that I plan on launching, I'm kind of charting out based on what they have access to. I'm very interested in finding bonefish on a flat by launching a kayak without having to go out in a boat and go to the far reaches of the planet to find them. I know where they are by boat with a motor on it, but I know very little about where they are doing a kayak. So I'll work at it. People have always patted me on the back, and they've always told me, you're really good at finding fish. And so that's what I plan to do. Permit's another one. But I also have a case of, for those of you that know me well, you already know this, but those that don't, I have a case of I don't cares. I love catching fish. I don't care what it is. I simply love going out there. The other day, I must have caught 20, 25, 30 barracuda. Now, most people would go, barracuda, that's not what I'm looking for. Why not? Why not? Who cares? They've been to rod. Quite a few of them ran drag. I'm happy with that. Caught them, brought them to the boat, released them, went and caught another one. So my ventures are about certain species. Obviously, I can't wait to get a bonefish on, especially in the kayak. That should be entertaining. I've done tarpon. That was entertaining. I'd love to get a permit. So those are the things. Those are some of my goals. But the important thing about this is I now live in an area where I have very, very easy access. This is a funny thing. I need to tell you, my kayak, I can put the kayaks in the water a mile away from the house. So I hook up the trailer, I put it on the Jeep. The Jeep doesn't even warm up yet when I get to where I'm dropping the kayaks in. And the same thing's true on coming home on a hot afternoon. I turn the air on in the Jeep, let the motor run while I'm loading things. Otherwise, the Jeep's not going to be cool for my 1 mile ride back to the house. So I'm happy about that. Very happy about that. I'm also happy about the water. I still can't get over how crystal clear it is. And it's probably going to take me quite some time to get used to that. It's a challenge when fishing. I will tell you that. I've listened to quite a bit of advice, and I've read quite a bit from different people and different guides around the Florida Keys because, I experienced some clear water when I fished in Fort Myers, but it was a rare thing. Clear water would happen in the winter when there was no rain, no wind. Things would calm down, and you'd get this beautiful kind of sea green water, kind of an aquamarine green water that you could see the bottom in, say, 5 feet, maybe 6, depends on where you were in Pine Island Sound and what areas you were in. But this is a whole different ball game right here. Water is very, very clear here, even in the back country, even in the back of the park, Pennicamp National Park. Bottom is sea grass like I haven't seen in years. Thick, thick turtle grass, thick manatee grass. And all the fish are swimming in between that, and not to mention the little sand holes and sand pots. But it brings on a new game plan because they see you much, much earlier than they do on the West Coast. When I fished most of the waters on the West Coast, you had a little leeway there. You were able to, come in the kayak or a boat, lay back a little bit, make a cast, and maybe catch a fish. Here it's critical. Distance is critical. Even in the kayak, if you roll up too close, everything you can see it all shooting around you. You can see it all leaving. It's like, what is that thing floating over my head? Now, before a kayaks are very stealthy. They're probably one of the best things in the world for going after fish, quite frankly. I mean, you're sitting on the water. I mean, your butt is on the water. It's really, it doesn't get much better than that. And I'm very addicted to that, as you might be able to tell. But the reality is the Clearwater throws a wrinkle into it that I have written about, I've talked about, but I've never really experienced it like this because my time in the Keys was way before I became a fishing guide and was way before I was writing books and doing talks and going on the radio and all that stuff. So now it's a new game. And so I started paying attention to a lot of the fishing reports, stories, especially the guys that I really respect down here that really fish a lot and catch a lot of fish. And one of those guys is Captain Dave Dinkert, and he was doing an interview on a podcast not too long ago, and I was listening to it, and he started talking about the Clearwater and the difficulties of Clearwater and how you can overcome that with changing your pound test on your line, on your braided line. And my ears perked up. I remember I was driving in the Jeep. I'm like, what's he talking about? And then he started talking about what most of us do is incorrect. I was one. A great many of us that fish braided line, Power Pro, that kind of stuff, fish 20-pound tests a lot. Some drop down to 15, but a great many fish 20. And some fish 30 or 40, depending on what they're going after, toothy creatures, that kind of stuff. But the majority of people that I ran into were like 20-pound test users. That's pretty much what they used. And that's a fairly thin line. I mean, it's not like, it's maybe, let's see, 20-pound test, if I remember right, it's the equivalent of 8-pound test monofilament in diameter. It could be 6. It could be 6 pound. I haven't looked at a chart in a while. So you have this extremely thin line that's very powerful. So you tend to gravitate toward that because it seems easy. It's like, I can do that. I can haul anything out. But what Dave pointed out was, no, that's not right. First of all, you got to be able to cast further. Clearwater has an obstacle. The obstacle is distance. You must get away from your target as far as possible. So you lower your line size. And in the case of braid, he was talking about, you're going to love this. Hold on to your shorts, man. 8-pound test. 8-pound test braid. Really, really skinny stuff. I don't know if those of you that have looked at a chart or even realize this, that is less than the diameter of 2-pound test monofilament. And that's like thread. So I thought, all right, I'll try it. So I picked up a couple spools of my favorite stuff, which, by the way, happens to be Cortland. I really like Cortland braid a lot. Power Pro is fine. I've got Power Pro on some of my reels, but Cortland's softer, holds color better than anything I've ever fished with. I don't know. I just really like it. I always have. And I used to tell people, Cortland's the inventor of the modern day fly line. I mean, these people have been around for a long, long time. And I figure if they can build something as complicated as fly line, they can certainly build a braid. And they have. I use yellow, yum yellow, bright yellow. So I can see where the line is when it's on the water, when I'm casting it, or when a fish is running with it. I don't want dark green. I don't want something I can't see when a fish bites and takes off. So I got some 8-pound. I put it on the reel, and boy, he ain't kidding about the cast difference. That took some getting used to. Had a few jigs in the mangrove. But you can overthrow the stuff, no doubt about it. Does it have drawbacks? Yeah, it does. It'll wind knot fairly easy. What I'm talking about is you got a breeze at your back when you're casting, and the lure hits the water. Or you're offering whatever, jig, shrimp, whatever it might be, a little bit of line will continue to come off the reel because it's so light, feather-like. And then you close the bail without looking, and you'll get one of those little ears hanging off. And next thing you know, on your next cast, you get there, zoop, and you're like, oh, man, and you put a wind knot in the line. It jams. It's hard to undo. If you think 20-pound braid is difficult to get a wind knot out of, you almost can't do it out of 8-pound test. So So there's that. But it was certainly worth it in the long run, because I now have a method that I just didn't even think about when I first heard about this. I heard about this in Fort Lauderdale, so I wasn't really doing much fishing in water like I'm in now. And it has made a huge difference in the distance and the cast. So the presentation that I have is much better and more stealthy. And the stealth is the really big deal, because you get too close to these fish, they'll move away. And I'd have to think it would work for most other people. And besides that, you're going to throw a leader on the end of it. You're going to do a 15-pound fluorocarbon leader to maybe even as much as 30 pounds. I use 30 when I'm messing with these cudas out here. And the fluorocarbon pink is something I like. It's very invisible in water. So now you have a light line, you have a little piece of fluorocarbon on the end. Then I have my jig and my soft plastic. I love soft plastics. That's typically what I fish with. So making that change about a year ago, I guess. I think that's when I heard Dave's comments about it. It could have been, maybe it wasn't quite that long ago, but it seems that way. Getting that extra distance, getting things to the target, that really works. Also, another side effect of braid that you need to know about, it sinks better. It's skinnier, so it goes down in the water column. It doesn't float on top as much as the thicker lines do. And that's kind of important too. There's times for mono, don't get me wrong. Mono actually sinks better than braid, period. So if you really want to get a bait down to a fish, you're fishing 8, 9, 10 feet of water, you're in the back country, you're doing ditches, you're doing those creeks and things that run along mangrove. You're trying to get a bait down. You might want to switch to mono. But I don't know, I'm a big fan of braid, and I just put a leader on the end and hope for the best. Braid has a tendency to float, so keep that in mind. So the skinnier it is, the more likely it's not going to float. And that's a big positive when you're playing around with soft plastics, because soft plastics tend to do the same thing. They like to float. There aren't very many of them that'll sink when they hit the water right away. Most of them will kind of drift down gently, and some of them will stay right on the surface if you don't have enough weight on them. So give it a try. Switch up, go real light. See what you think. Watch out for the wind knots. Pay attention to your line, but see what you think. I think you'll be surprised. I was. And I got to thank Captain Dave for telling people that. I thought it was really interesting. Change gears, but still keys. But see, I got off on that fishing thing. You see what happens? I started reading a mystery series that I had long ago put on the back burner. Yeah, it's a book. No reason but for the fact that I was just too busy doing the fishing guide thing back then to do much reading. Tom Corcoran is the author of the Alex Rutledge Mystery Series. And I read his first book on my wife's recommendation. Janelle's like, you need to pick that back up. You're really going to enjoy this. This guy writes it. He's a Keys author. He's lived a great deal of time in the Keys, and he's got this mystery series based out of Key West. And I thought, okay, well, so I read the first one. It's the Mango Opera, and there are now 10. Man, I missed the boat, boys. It was just like, okay, so back up and let's try it again. But I really enjoyed it. And I guess I enjoyed it because I have spent a great deal of time in the Keys. So the areas he was talking about, the places, the streets, the restaurants, that kind of thing, all hit home. I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. Plus, he's a very good writer. The mystery was good. There was lots of twists and turns, which is what I like in a good mystery. I'm a mystery novel freak. I really love them. So anyway, the main character is Alex Rutledge, and there's 10 of them. I'm currently on number 2. I just started Gumbo Limbo, just as good. His writing's getting a little fresher in number 2, which is what happens to everybody that authors books. You just get better as you go along because you start learning. He had an awful lot of characters in the first book to keep track of, and he's kind of evened that out quite a bit in the second book, so that makes it a little better. But it's based out of Key West, and I really like that. Tom Corcoran's got a really interesting bio. This may interest some of you. He has been a DJ for radio. He was a bartender, a naval officer, a photographer, a freelance photographer, and a journalist. He also, this is an interesting little tip, he also co-wrote 2 Jimmy Buffett songs, Fins and The Cuban Cry of Passion. And his photos have appeared on 7 different Buffett album covers, which I thought was really interesting. He also, I follow him on Facebook, and he posts really interesting old photographs, like 35, 40, 50 years ago of Key West and some of the sites in Key West and how much things have changed. And I really, really enjoy that. I think that's really cool. He also has a lot of insight about the twists and turns of the Keys and Keys' life. The main character, Rutledge, is a crime scene photographer. They always say, write what you know, so there you go. And as usual, he seems to find himself mixed up in something each and every novel. I love it. Highly recommend it. Read it. I think you'll enjoy it too. Janelle and I made a promise on the way home from fishing the other day to visit more restaurants. This is really funny. It's like everywhere else, and I'm sure most of my listeners do this. You lock down on a place that you really, really like. You know the people. You might know the chef. You certainly know the waitress, waiter that you really like, that you ask for by name. And you know what night to go. You're like, okay, this is the best night to go. And you do it over and over and over again. And we decided we just can't do that here. It's impossible. We've had lots of great recommendations we need to try. But all in all, it's like we'll drive by a place and go, that looks cool. So that's what we're going to try to do. I guess you would call this what month is September going in? We'll call it an October resolution. We're going to try to hit more spots, and I'm going to talk about them here. I thought it would be only fair to go out and try some of these. There's so many great places to eat in the Keys, even just simply just in Key Largo, without even wandering out of our town. It's absolutely amazing how much stuff there is. Great fish, just great dishes. The other day I saw an Italian place. I don't eat Italian all that much anymore. Tomatoes and I don't get along like they used to, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to see what's up about it. But so I'll keep you posted on that. That may become a future podcast as well. We'll see. Coming soon. I've decided, with encouragement from others, to investigate as many bait and tackle shops as possible from here in Key Largo all the way down to Key West. I'm going to break it up into 2 pieces. As I have seen most people that do podcasts or live remotes, whatever, they'll tend to do the upper Keys and the lower Keys. Same story. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start up here in Key Largo, and I'm going to work my way down through Marathon. And what I'm going to do is try to stop at every single tackle and bait shop along the way. Near our house are 3. To give you, seriously, there are 3 within just 3 miles of us. 2 that I've been in, and both were really good. But I want to kind of venture out and give people an idea that are coming down here. If you come down to fish, come down for lobster, come down, whatever, that, here's what's available, and here's where you can go to pick up your bait and your tackle and things like that. Repairs. I saw one the other day does rod and reel repair, which I thought, wow, that's great. And he's near my home. So anyway, I'm going to start soon. Cruise Key Largo, go all the way down through Marathon. So I'm going to do one in the upper Keys. That ought to take every bit of an hour of podcast time. So it'll probably be the longest podcast I've ever done. And then I'll do the other half. I'll start below Marathon on the other side of the 7 Mile Bridge and work my way down to Key West and talk about tackle and bait places. It's always intrigued me. It was either this or do my favorite bars. Well, I could do that too. Maybe I could do it at the same time. I don't know. Y'all tell me what you think. Send me a note. So the 1-year anniversary of this podcast, Catch Ya Outdoors, is next week. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, as I said earlier, but it should be interesting. I'm guessing it'll start with fishing. After all, that's what brought me to where I am today. My love of fishing knows no bounds. It calms me. It still takes away all the problems of the world, along with my health. It's brought me good friends, including charter fishing folks that still keep track of me, even though I've had to give up charter fishing over 7 years ago. It also brought me a wonderful wife, great kids, grandkids, a long-running radio show, a couple of books with another one on the way, dozens of stories by writing and by mouth. So please tune in next week and find out what I finally decided to talk about on the show. Have a wonderful week, and I'll touch base with you next Tuesday. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate taking the time to tune in. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell a friend to leave a review. My podcasts are scheduled for each and every Tuesday. Catch You Outdoors is presented by Waypoint Podcast Network. It's available on Waypoint and by many of your favorite podcast providers. The Facebook page is Catch You Outdoors, the website, waypointtv.com and catchyoutdoors.com. Until next time, get outdoors and enjoy.